Wish you were one of those influencers with raving fans who binge on your every word, consume all your content, buy everything you have to sell, and demand even more? Then stay tuned while Authority Magazine columnist and BuzzFeed contributor Tracy Hazard shares strategies, tips, and tactics from top videocasters, podcasters, authors, and social influencers on creating that bingeable factor. Now, let's join Tracy as she explores how to rise above all the digital noise with the binge factor.
Hey everyone, welcome to Feed Your Brand Center of Influence. And we've been interviewing top podcasters, or I've been interviewing top podcasters. Tom's been still doing the regular Feed Your Brand episodes, if you guys haven't noticed. So more of the tips and tools and tricks on becoming a podcaster. But I've been doing these great Center of Influence interviews with top podcasters. Some of them are newer. Some of them have been podcasting for a really long time, if you haven't noticed. But they all have interesting tips, interesting journeys. And Manuj Aggarwal, who has Bootstrapping Your Dreams, is one of them. And I'm so excited to have him today because he's an entrepreneur, an investor, and a technology enthusiast. And Manuj started his career at 15 working in a factory. So he's here 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, $2 a day. Like totally different life than many of us. And that is so interesting. So he had no contacts. He was determined to make something of himself. And he managed to get an education, become a technical leader and CTO in multiple startups. So he knows just how it is to be bootstrapping your life, let alone your dreams and your companies. So he's been interviewing interesting people who've also been bootstrapping their companies and talks about resilience, adaptability, bending the rules. I love that one. Serving the customer over your own desires and just, want to build something cool. That happens way too often in the tech industry. So we're definitely going to mention that. So he's the principal consultant, architect, and CTO of a software consulting company called Tetra Noodle, based in Vancouver, Canada. And he has helped various startups founders bootstrap their dreams and bring innovative products to market quickly and efficiently. I love that. It's one of my favorite areas to talk about. We might just have to do another interview at some point and do an Inc. article on bootstrapping innovation. So we'll have to talk about that further. Manuj, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. And thank you for that long introduction.
Well, hey, we got to make sure everybody knows who you are. So you started your podcast earlier this year in February. What made you decide to start one?
It was interesting. I've been listening to podcasts on and off for years, and I've been trying to expand my business. I've bootstrapped it and trying to get more clients and all that. And through that journey, I've been trying to understand, digital marketing, how things work. I've tried a lot of things, the sales funnels, SEO, email marketing, what have you, like Facebook ads and everything. And then one of my good friends, he suggested that I try podcasting. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I was kind of, intimidated because putting yourself out there in a live environment, it's not something that I've done before. And I didn't even know whether I'll be able to pull it off. But then, I said, okay, let's give it a shot. And then I just put, I think, a couple of episodes together in the first month or so. Actually, let me step back. He gave me that advice and I was like, okay, let's put that in the back burner and see if I can do something around it. And then, as they say, things sort of come together by sheer luck. And I ran into a person who is an expert in getting podcasts started and sort of, help podcasters set up their infrastructure and get started with the podcast. So, I just took that chance and then produced a couple of episodes. It was really, really difficult to, figure out how things will transpire, like what is happening. It was just total chaos initially, but then slowly I got a hang of it, and here I am.
Yeah, and now you're 30-something episodes in, right? And it's starting to feel good, right?
Actually, we are episode 66 now. So.
Oh, wow. When you submitted to me, it was at 33. So I was like, I thought there was more because I thought that I'd listened to like episode 50 or something like that when I was listening.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I've been having so much fun. Like, we're doing on average one episode a day, so it's
Oh, so you've been building up fast. I love it.
yeah. Mhm.
So has anything really interesting or exciting happened to you already since you started the podcast?
A lot of interesting things, like just being able to talk to so many experienced people, so many people with so much wisdom, and they are sharing it away, freely. Like a lot of these people, like if I just approach them one on one, they will not be able to give me any time whatsoever. And here we are talking to them one on one about their life, learning from them, getting mentorship. So that has been really interesting. And the other thing is just putting yourself out there. It has sort of opened up my own beliefs that I can do things, even if I initially think they are too difficult for me. I can, if I take on the challenge and if I apply myself, I can do it. And that goes for everyone. I mean, that's one lesson that I want to share with everyone. Like, if you sit down and actually decide to do something, doors open up, people show up to help. And I know it's a cliche, but it has actually happened to me in the past few months. So I'm sharing that as a first-hand experience.
What about something going really wrong? Funny things that might have happened to you when you were starting up?
Yeah. Okay. So I had this amazing guest. He has amazing podcast, award-winning podcast, and I went through this interview with him. It was a very interesting conversation. And then, towards the end, I'm telling him, okay, this is when the podcast will publish and all. And I realized I did not turn on the recording.
Oh
So
no.
the whole interview, it was just a casual conversation. And then he was nice enough to say, okay, it happens. It has happened to him as well. So him being a podcaster. So he actually came back next week, but that was quite funny.
You know what? That is like my biggest fear. And as you said that, I'm like looking right into the corner to make sure it's even though I know I turned it on, but it's one of those things. But
Exactly.
I now have my Zoom automatically set to record. So it records all sorts of junk, but I have a production team. So like it's easier for me than other people. But a lot of times I'll turn it off and turn it back on to, but at least it's always on. So like, I know it's not going to mess me up, because that's my biggest fear is I'll just start talking and you won't get it,
Exactly.
and I can't repeat myself because it's like it comes out of my mouth. And I was like, what questions did I ask? I can't repeat that. So
Exactly.
I know that like agonizing, like, oh no, I have to do this over.
Yeah.
That happens.
The second interview was totally different. Like, I mean, it was along the same lines, but the content was quite different. As you said, like, the conversations we have, we cannot always repeat them. So it just went in a different direction. I mean, the second episode was pretty good as well, but that was a funny thing. To your point, now I switch on recording by default so that I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. Let's please do that. So, you got some advice from someone when you first started, but what advice, what would you do different if you started again today?
So I think I will plan it a little bit better. I will think about, what will be the format of the show, who should we get, come up with some sort of a calendar according to which we will publish the episodes. Because as when we started, basically we were just spamming other people to begging them to come to our show, and some people said yes, and then they forgot, and then we followed up. So there was like hardly any process there, and slowly we improved. So it would have been better to learn a little bit about how to launch a podcast and plan it out. There is a certain science behind it. Like a lot of people who are expert podcasters, they have it down to certain steps. Like they have a planned launch date, and then it gets you do some selling, pre-marketing before the launch.
So maybe have a little strategy beforehand.
Exactly. So that's something that I would have done differently.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your show. So bootstrapping your dreams. I mean, that is very personal, obviously, to you from the introduction that I gave you. So are you finding that it's resonating, that it's really hitting a note for the audience and for the guests that you're having?
I think so. I mean, I've been getting this direct feedback that these are the questions that are relevant to people, because I listen to other podcasts as well. A lot of the podcasts have all these mega successful people like billionaires and millionaires, and they talk about their life journey, but they are at a level where mere mortals like us, we cannot really relate to that. So when I talk to people, even though they're successful, I talk about their initial struggles. I talk about how they got through, because at the end of the day, that is what I want to know, and I think a lot of people want to understand that as well.
I
So
so
that's
agree. I so agree. I mean, I mentioned before that I have an ink column. I have an ink column on innovation. And the reason they gave me the column 4 years ago, and they gave it to me from my podcast. So they heard me on a podcast and said, that's the kind of things we want.
yeah,
And so, and it was because people want to start from where they are. Like, it's great to be aspirational about it, but being able to start from where you are and figure out what that next step is, that is going to take you on that path. That's important to know. And so often we can't follow the same model as Elon Musk. It's just not going to happen, right?
yeah, exactly.
But maybe we can follow the same model as Manuj and get ourselves where we need to go, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, the thing is, so to your point, you are exactly right. Like we may not be able to follow Elon Musk's model, but what I want to know is not about how do you sleep, what kind of food do you eat, like, you are mega successful, but I want to know, okay, how did you feel when your first rocket that you launched did not go well, and the second one did not go well? How did you overcome that, that agony, and how did you have the courage to keep on going? Because at some point, from what I know about Elon Musk's story, he was actually just about out of money. He barely had a little bit of money left for the final launch, which was the success for his space company. And
Yeah. We want to know those stories. Like, how do you keep going?
Exactly.
So has being a podcast host changed, your ability to get invited to events and do speaking engagements, and changed your, I'm going to call it, industry authority?
It's still in the works. I will say I'm getting more. I'm getting noticed, I will say, but it hasn't gotten to. I mean, it has only been 6 months, but it is going in the right direction. I can see it is going to have a good effect. It's coming. It started to happen, but I haven't booked any speaking assignments yet. But yeah, I mean, it's happening.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that, because that should be what's working for you. So do you find that, when you were planning out your show in the way that you did, and you said you're a podcast listener, did you plan for a uniqueness? Because you did an episode recently on being unique. And so did you plan for differentiation and for really setting yourself apart?
I did not. So here's the deal, right? I have worked with a lot of startup founders, entrepreneurs, and I know they have a certain mindset. Like, they have always, sort of adopting an image that is not their own image. That's not who they are. Like, they're always adopting, trying to emulate Apple. They're trying to emulate Amazon, or they're trying to emulate really successful people. Yet they are not there yet. So I wanted to sort of remove the curtain and show the world that entrepreneurship is not about projecting this type of image. It's more about something real, something more grounded. It's more about customers. And so that opinion I did not really find in the real world while working with a lot of entrepreneurs. It existed, or it was not apparent. So I wanted to bring that up. Now, how popular that opinion is, I didn't know that. And it was just an experiment. And now I'm realizing a lot of people actually, in their minds, they think that way, and they want to listen to these real stories rather than, fictional sort of aspirational things that, as you mentioned, pretending to be something that they're not, or how they say it, fake it till you make it. I mean, some people still
doing that.
Exactly.
Let's just make it where we are.
Exactly.
I love that. That's really great. I did an interview with Jim Beach, who's School for Startups Radio, and he has that same philosophy about being, about that taking in money isn't the answer. That sometimes we have to get that doing these bootstrapping things are learning experiences that we must go through.
Yeah.
And that sometimes when they take the money, they didn't get this learning experience, and then they aren't even able to apply it and achieve the success that they wanted to. So it can be a curse as well as a blessing as you get that. So I love that you're focusing on that. I think that's a really unique area, and I'm sure is going to continue to serve you well as it already has. So great. So let's tap into some of our tips, because you're still early on, but you still have, you've got some lessons learned, I'm sure. So these are our best ways to. So the best ways to book great guests.
Sure. So when I started, I'll just speak about my journey and the lessons I learned. So when I started off, I used LinkedIn heavily. So I looked at people who are relevant and try to approach them. So use LinkedIn. Then there are some directories, online directories, where people who want to be guests, they list their name and their email address and whatnot. So try to contact them, and obviously try to craft an email in such a way that actually tells them that you are inspired by the guests and you want to learn from them, and they are open to sharing your story. So that's one. And then obviously, as you gain more success, you should capitalize on that. So my show hit the top 200 within like 3 or 4 months. So after that, when I started to approach people, I did highlight that fact that it's a top 200 podcast. So that made it quite easy for people to say yes, because they see that that I'm committed and I'm doing something serious, and so those are some of the things that I did, and I've been sort of successful in getting the guests. And now I have a huge backlog of guests, and I have to figure out how I'm going to accommodate them.
Just keep doing the interviews, right? I love it. Wonderful. Well, what about some ways to increase listeners?
So start with the friends and family, and start again. LinkedIn has been really good, because what I have been doing is repurposing the content. So when we do an interview, we also record video, we put it on YouTube, we transcribe the interview, we put it on our website, and we take small sort of content pieces, something important that the guest said. We take those slices of video and post them on LinkedIn as well. So that way, it's basically spreading the awareness to the audience, and asking them to just check it out. And once they listen to a few episodes, then they find value, and then they stay.
Wonderful. Producing in a professional way. What are some best ways to do that?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, just before this interview, you gave me feedback about the mic, and I changed it. So I'm still trying to figure it out. Exactly. So thanks a lot for that. So, I mean, again, it's a work in progress. None of us are like trained videographers or audio engineers or whatever. So it's just, hit and trial. So I use a webcam, Logitech webcam, and I had this Yeti mic, which apparently has some echo. So I also got a Aggarwal mic, so this is better. So it's still trying to figure it out. My room has echo, so I'm trying to figure out how to soundproof it and all that stuff. So that may come in a few months.
Yeah. So you know what? You're falling into the same problem most people do. So I'm gonna make sure, just because I can here, we have links to, and my team will insert them right here at this moment, links to our best microphones and the environment fixes, as well as just ways to improve your sound. So like there's a couple of episodes we've done on Feed Your Brand, and I'll make sure they relink them right here. But what I can tell everyone right now is get rid of your Yeti microphone unless you're in a sound studio. Because it's making it worse. Because you have an echoey environment, the Yeti picks up sound all over the place. It's a different type of mic. You want a dynamic microphone. And so that's why we recommend like these type, because you're only picking up sound right in the front. It's not picking up sound from around. And so it's picking up less of the bounce, which makes your production easier. So there you go. We've gotten tips going back and forth from both sides here. So yeah, well, wonderful. But you're right. Producing is a work in progress. It gets better and better the more time, money, experience you have in seeing how that works. So I so agree with that. So how about encouraging engagement? Have you been able to engage with your audience?
So that's again a work in progress. The first few episodes, I didn't know what to do about that. But as we made progress, so I've added call to action in the end of the episodes. I just launched a Facebook group, so I'll add some call to action for people to join the Facebook group and create a community, so that once they get some education from the podcast, they can actually get into a community, exchange ideas. If they have any problems in their professional lives, personal lives, we can help them out. So that's what I'm trying to do, to build that community and actually not just have listeners, but actually have more engagement in real life. We are able to solve their problems, help them move forward.
Love that. What about some of the best ways to monetize your show? Are you thinking about that as you move into the future?
I'm not too sure. I've looked at certain models. A lot of people say ads may be a way to go, but I don't know whether I feel really good about ads. What I may be able to do is look at certain products like which I'm passionate about and recommend them. So through that recommendation, it could be it'll be a genuine recommendation. Through that recommendation, there may be some monetization opportunity that comes up. Otherwise, I already have my consulting services. I have my IT professional training services. So just getting our name out there and telling people that these are options available. We have a lot of experience in these fields, and if we start to get some leads through that, that could be a good enough way to monetize it.
Wonderful. So I'm assuming, because you've already mentioned it a couple of times, that social media, that LinkedIn might be one of the best ways to reach you. It's one of the best ways to reach me as well. So I agree with you on there. But do you have your name or your show name everywhere on social media? What have you done there?
It's my name is there. I don't remember if I have added my show name on LinkedIn. There are links to the podcast for sure, but I haven't really advertised it in a way on my profile. I'm the host of Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. Probably I should, but in my daily posts, I do mention them once in a while that this guest came on and they said this, that short snippet of audio, and then I post the link to the podcast. So that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
And you have your show notes and everything is at touchrenewal.com, which is your website for
Exactly.
your core business, and you put your podcast there, which is a super smart strategy, by the way, guys. So everyone out there, think about it. If you already have a core business and it's related to your podcast, unless it's truly unrelated, keeping them together can be very powerful. So good choice there. Yeah. So what about some future great guests? Do you have some guests in mind that you just really, you're obviously full up on your schedule, but is there someone that you would drop everything for to interview?
You mentioned that name, Elon Musk. I admire him tremendously. It's like what he's doing. He's pushing the boundaries of humanity. Some of the core problems we are facing right now, nobody's doing it at the scale in the way that he's approaching it. So I'd love to get into his mind and see how he gets his inspiration from doing all these things. And other than that, anybody who has bootstrapped, and whether they have been successful or unsuccessful, I'd love to know what were the factors that contributed to their success, or what are the mistakes they made that led to the failure. But because I always believe that mistakes are not actually failures, or mistakes are not mistakes as we take it. They're just ways to learn and grow.
I so agree. We learn so much more from our failures than we do from our successes. It's unfortunately that way, but it is. We're tough learners, right? We have to go through the hard knocks. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, what days? So you have a 5-day week, right? That's Monday through Friday then?
Yeah. And sometimes, because right now we have about 20-25 recorded interviews. So I think over the next 2-3 weeks, we'll also post on over the weekend so that we can catch up. And then
this is you're touching into a point that can happen to people, is when you do have a backlog, it actually hurts your relationship building with your guests, because they're like, why isn't this posted? It feels like a waste of time. And that hurts that relationship you built and that rapport you built. So trying not to be that far ahead can be helpful. And so a great way to do it is just post some extra episodes. Why not? So hopefully your audience will catch up. So Bootstrapping Your Dreams, 5 days a week. You can catch it pretty much anywhere. You're syndicated all over. I checked you out. So I was listening on Google Podcasts, but I saw that you were also on Stitcher and iTunes. So you're a little bit of everywhere. Are you on Spotify yet?
Yes, yes.
All right. So see, you're everywhere already. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, Manuj. It's so wonderful to meet you in person, and I'm so glad we could get this going and get to know someone who's up and coming but has a great strategy for their show in terms of its audience connection and its message. So I love that you've married the two. So thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. So Manuj Aggarwal, Bootstrapping Your Dreams, 5 days a week, out in the air in the podcast realm. Go check it out. I'm Tracy Hazard on Feed Your Brand, and we're going to bring you more Center of Influence. All the blog posts for this episode and all the links to Manuj will be at feedyourbrand.co. And of course, we are on social media everywhere at Feed Your Brand. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Tracy Hazard with 2 Z's. So I would love to connect with you, hear more about it. We're also posting all of these are turning into articles on Authority Magazine. So be sure to connect and check out the follow-up articles that are coming from this. If you have a podcast and you'd like to be featured just like Manuj, then you've got to reach out to us. You've got to apply, feedyourbrand.co/PR now. Thanks everyone for listening. I'll be back again next week with a new episode of Center of Influence on Feed Your Brand.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Binge Factor podcast. For more information on podcasting and videocasting success tips and tactics, please go to thebingefactor.com. And be sure to listen to our other show for podcasters called Feed Your Brand. If you'd like to be interviewed on this show, as well as featured in Tracy's column, please go to thebingefactor.com/guest and apply.